Good evening, live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman television. Here we present to you tonight's news bulletin. But first, the headlines. The Sultanate participates in the 24th meeting of Their Excellencies the Ministers of Municipal Affairs in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. The Ministry of Labor continues conducting examinations for public sector vacancies. And the Ministry of Health reports 1 death, 57 new COVID-19 cases and 97 recoveries. Good evening once again, and thank you for joining us. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. The Sultanate, represented by the Minister of Interior, participated today in the 24th meeting of Their Excellencies Ministers concerned with municipal affairs in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries via video link. The meeting discussed a number of topics related to the joint Gulf Municipal Work Strategy and future directions for urban planning, highlighting the Gulf Municipal work in regional and international forums, and touched upon the establishments of specialized conferences and the Secretariat's proposals to hold the Gulf Municipal Week. The meeting also discussed the impact of the corona pandemic on municipal work and the efforts made by municipalities in the GCC countries to limit its impact. The Sultanate was represented on behalf of His Excellency the Minister of Interior and Chairman of the Council of Governorates Affairs by His Excellency Sayyid Khalifa bin Al-Mardas Al-Bu Saidi, Secretary General of Governorates Affairs at the Ministry of Interior. The Dhofar Municipal Council held a meeting today to discuss various matters on service developments and renovations in the wilayats. The matters discussed include recommendations on the implementation of the Rakhyut fishing dock mapping of residential and commercial plots in Modem in the wilaya of Salalah. The meeting discussed also rehabilitation of some roads in Salalah to ease the traffic. The meeting was headed by His Excellency Sayyid Mohammed bin Sultan Al-Bu Saidi, the State Minister Governor of Dhofar and the Chairman of Municipal Council. In line with His Majesty's directives to expedite the employment process for national job seekers, Ministry of Labour continues to hold in University of Technology and Applied Sciences in Nizwa examinations for 168 job seekers who applied for public jobs. Job seekers who have met the minimum job requirements have competed for the public jobs advertised by the ministry that has adopted a transparent testing mechanism. Meanwhile, Ministry of Labour invests its efforts currently in developing a rapid and efficient employment process. The Ministry of Health reported 1 death, 57 new COVID-19 cases and 97 recoveries. The ministry also reported that the total number of COVID-19 cases registered in the Sultanate reached 302,924, while the total number of deaths reached was 4,084. The total recovered cases reached 293,007. The ministry indicated that the total number of inpatients reached 82, of which 26 are in intensive care units around healthcare institutions in the country. 305,530 schools students between the age of 12 and 17 from all over the country received their vaccine against COVID-19, with the figure rising to 90%. The number of people who received 1 dose of the vaccine from the total targeted categories rose to 277,381, consisting of 81.6%, while those who received 2 doses advanced to 28,149 people. You are with the Sultanate of Oman television, and yet to come in our news bulletin, a young woman flying solo around the world to beat the record completed the first leg of our journey in Costa Rica. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. Small and Medium Enterprises Development Authority implemented a workshop under the theme Developing the Craft Sector. The workshop came up with some suggestions and recommendations in the fields of governance, empowerment of national cadres, and enhancing the media role in spreading the culture of Omani craft industries preservation, and the importance of using modern and innovative tools and mechanisms to achieve this goal. During the conclusion ceremony of the event, winning teams in Craft Innovation Hackathon were honored. The first place was won by Craft Platform team, while Omani Hands Project team came second. The third place was achieved by the Marruth Project team. The ceremony was presided over by His Excellency Salim bin Mohammed Al Mahrouqi, Minister of Heritage and Tourism. Royal Air Force of Oman, supported by Royal Army of Oman, operated one of its helicopters to transport consumables to citizens of Al Khur village in the Wilaya of Bala in the Governorate of Ad-Dakhiliya due to the difficulty in reaching these villages through road and lands. Within the framework of development services rendered by departments of the Ministry of Defense and Sultan's Armed Forces side by side with the rest of other government establishment as a program that includes remote and mountainous areas in the Sultanate to meet all the necessary requirements and needs. Tireless efforts are being exerted by the Sultanate in combating air pollution, which represent a global phenomenon due to its danger on Earth planet. Along with other countries in the world, the Sultanate marked the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies, which falls on the 7th of September every year. The Sultanate has promulgated laws and regulations to limit the harms emissions in the air and established stations to monitor the quality of air in various areas in the country. As part of its celebrations of this day, the Environment Authority distributed some wild tree seedlings. International news. Qatar's foreign minister landed in Tehran today and held talks with his Iranian counterpart Hussein Amir Abdullahian. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani is visiting Iran 2 days after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held talks in Doha with the Qatari discussing mainly Afghanistan. Iran has welcomed departure of the U.S. forces from Afghanistan and has described it as a failure for America. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has called for elections in Afghanistan to determine the future of the country, where he hopes peace will return after Western troops have left and the Taliban have seized control. The Taliban on Tuesday announced an all-male interim government for Afghanistan stacked with the veterans of their hard-line rule from the 1990s and the 20th year battle against the US-led coalition, a move that seems unlikely to win the international support the new leaders desperately need to avoid an economic meltdown. A European Commission spokesperson today voiced disapproval of the Taliban's interim cabinet. Peter Stano was speaking to reporters in Brussels and added that
well, looking at the names which were announced, this doesn't really look like an inclusive and representative government. This government is not something that the Taliban was promising to appoint people who would be reflecting the diverse and rich cultural, ethnical background that Afghanistan has. So I can only recall that one of the benchmarks set by the European Union, by the foreign ministers, is that creation of an inclusive and representative transitional government through negotiations. This is one of the benchmarks based on which we will be judging the authorities in Afghanistan and based on which we will then decide about the level of our engagement. So the first step they made is already not matching the expectations. So we are looking forward to have in place a government in Afghanistan, a permanent government, which will be reflecting this principle of inclusivity and being a representative body of the Afghan society.
Attractions at Kabul's Qargha Lake deserted after Taliban takeover. More in this report.
Attractions on the banks of Kabul's Qargha Lake were almost deserted, with workers in the area pointing to the economic woes under the new Taliban rule.
The bazaar we had in the past is not something we have at present, because the banks are closed. There is no job. People no longer spend money.
Qargha Lake is one of Kabul's few options for weekend getaways and has previously been a popular spot for horse riding and theme parks. Restaurants and hotels that dot the shore were also popular with Afghan government officials and businessmen. But restaurant manager Khan was not optimistic about the future. He said, as long as the professional workers leave the country and those who have arrived are not able to understand the system, everyone is worried about the future. Still, others were hoping that their businesses could pick up eventually.
In the previous government, it was good to have a job and a market. But now within the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, because it had just arrived, the job and the market have not started yet.
The Taliban drew from its inner high echelons on Tuesday to fill top posts in Afghanistan's new government, including an associate of the Islamist militant group's founder as premier and a wanted man as interior minister.
And now to this special story here. A teen pilot who is seeking to break the world record as the youngest woman to fly solo around the world touched down in Costa Rica as part of her journey. More details is being described here by Susan Bentalia As-Suleimania.
A teen pilot who is seeking to break the world record as the youngest woman to fly solo around the world touched down in Costa Rica yesterday as part of her journey. 19-year-old Zara Rutherford took off from Western Belgium on August 18th in her Shark Ultralight, the world's fastest microlight aircraft. She is looking to cover 51 kilometers in her bid. The British-Belgian flyer hopes her voyage will encourage more girls and women to study and work in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as sparks girls' interests in aviation. Rutherford is seeking to win the title from Shaista Ways, who became the youngest woman to fly solo around the world at 30. The youngest male record holder, Mason Andrews, was 18-year-old when he made that journey. Rutherford's route will take about 3 months with stops in 52 countries, including Greenland, China, and Nicaragua, where she will stay with local families or in hotels.
Of course, we wish her all the best on her journey there. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Sultanate participates in the 24th meeting of their Excellencies the Ministers of Municipal Affairs in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. The Ministry of Labour continues conducting examinations for public sector vacancies. And the Ministry of Health reports 1 death, 57 new COVID-19 cases and 97 recoveries. And with that, we do conclude this news bulletin brought to you live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman television. From the entire news team and myself, we thank you for joining us, wish you a pleasant evening and of course a nice weekend. Good night.